So in recent years, Portland, Oregon has become a center of clashes between the far right and the far left, with law enforcement often not intervening or arresting protesters who are instigating violence.
In response to the escalating protests, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler tried passing an ordinance limiting when, where, and how long protests could occur in the city, but it failed. Over the weekend, violence broke out again in Portland during counter-protests by Antifa and right-wingers holding a, quote, Him Too rally. 6 people were arrested. It got ugly. There were flashbangs. There were punches and kicks and batons and weapons, all kinds of things. We've got somebody who was there to tell you about this. Journalist and editor for Colette magazine, Andy No, was covering that rally. He's seen the violence and frequent police interaction with these protesters firsthand. He was right in the mix, in the middle of it. He joins us now via Skype. Andy, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Good morning.
All right, so just first, please set the scene. Who's there in Portland? What do they think they are on both sides? This was a left and right issue. What do they think they are either protesting or counter-protesting?
Right, so the footage that we keep seeing coming out of Portland is showing these bloody street brawls, but I'd like to sort of set the context of how we actually got to this point. So Portland is a progressive monoculture, and here the so-called resistance is mainstream. And that word and concept is powerful to the people here because it evokes war. So people here, since the election of Donald Trump, have genuinely believed that we have ushered in fascism. Hence, that's why we've had violent rioting on the streets and bloody confrontations, not just with Trump supporters, but even just regular conservatives. And I sought to document the excesses of Antifa and Antifa sympathetic movements for the past 2 years because I felt like the local media, which is primarily progressive and left of center, were derelict in their duty because they portrayed these groups as actual anti-fascists rather than the organized street militia that they actually are.
When you say the organized street militia and the violent tactics, can you describe what kind of things this Antifa protest in Portland was doing? What were the people saying? I mean, I know you've posted a lot of video of this. What were they saying to you about why they were there and what the purpose of this whole thing is when it comes to these continued counter-protests?
Yesterday's event that they were protesting was a Him Too event, which was organized by a local young conservative Jewish woman with the hopes of bringing attention to men who have been falsely accused of sex crimes. Now, the group that she's connected to has organized a whole bunch of pro-Trump related events in Portland, and anything that is seen as supportive of Donald Trump is seen as supportive of fascism here. So that is the talking point that Antifa and various other leftist organizations use to mobilize people to come out on the streets to basically, well, with the fringe of them, to fight for their lives. So some of them came with things such as feces ready to throw at people, bottled urine, but then some of them will bring actual weapons too, batons. And every time that these clashes happen, because the presence of Antifa is so large, it costs the city tens of thousands of dollars in police overtime. And over the past 2 years, it's cost several $1 million already.
Andy, talk a little bit about this group, Patriot Prayer. This isn't the first time they've had a violent clash with Antifa in Portland. Who are they? What are they about? And what's the history here?
Patriot Prayer is primarily one person, really. It's a man named Joey Gibson who lives across the river in Vancouver, Washington. He's a kind of a run-of-the-mill evangelical conservative, and he started organizing pro-Trump events, I think probably in some part to be a little bit provocative after the election of Donald Trump. You know, 2016 was kind of the year of Milo Yiannopoulos type people, and I wonder if he was trying to do something like that. So naturally, his events garnered a lot of controversy. And
so is he looking for a confrontation in a sense? I mean, coming over to Portland, there's been a flare-up before. Is he trying to provoke a confrontation?
People blame him for that. From what I've witnessed, I don't think so. I've seen him always try to engage with peaceful dialogue. For example, I've seen him now on a handful of occasions. He'll come up to somebody, and the people who are the first to throw a punch or to throw something at his face is always coming from the other side. And Even in September, when him and his group actually had brought flowers as a gesture and brought it over to the Antifa side. Of course, they didn't accept the gesture, and then later in the night, it ended up devolving into a brawl anyways.
Andy, speaking of brawling, you were hit, yelled at, things thrown at you. What happened? I mean, we can hear some of it in the audio. We can't play the audio because of the kind of things people were saying. But was this just because you were a journalist, or did they know who you were? I mean, I know that there have been just run-of-the-mill journalists that have been attacked at these rallies in the past.
It's both. So at these events, at best, journalists are viewed with skepticism and at worst with contempt. So yesterday, because some of my work has been published in national publications like Wall Street Journal, bringing attention to what Antifa does in the city, I've gained a reputation, you could say, among Antifa. So as soon as I came, they knew who I was. I could not see who they were because they were masked up and wearing sunglasses and other things obscuring their identities. And the experience was a bit like something out of film. It was surreal. It was kind of like it was so organized the way they responded. They encircled me, turned their backs to me, and then in addition to saying all the vicious insults, were backing up into me in a way that was pushing me out of the public plaza, so I couldn't document it. And then when they were not satisfied with pushing me enough, people would follow me around and use their signs to block my camera so I can't record. And they were accusing me. They were saying lots of racially tinged things, for example, that I should be ashamed. My parents would be ashamed because I'm shilling for white supremacy. That was something that was said to me yesterday.
Andy, I think the incidents of violence that we've been seeing across the country are deeply troubling in a free society such as ours. And one of the things I'm interested in is how much that sort of violence and tactics are being embraced in the mainstream. For example, in New York, you had the Proud Boys being invited into a mainstream Republican club and then violence breaking out afterwards. How much has Antifa been embraced by sort of the mainstream Democratic establishment?
I would say in 2016 and through part of 2017, they were viewed as kind of like folk heroes to the city with the established politicians here because they believe what the media said. They refer to them as anti-fascists, and that's where the deception is really strong. I would say that
have the local electeds spoken out in favor of Antifa?
Not anymore now, because they're seeing the bill that the city has to pay when these people come out and wreak havoc in downtown Portland. So I've seen them kind of distance themselves a bit more, but they don't want to come out too strong against the far left because there's a large constituency on the left who, although they will not participate in the tactics of Antifa or other similar movements, they share similar goals and sympathies. So it's a difficult position for our Democratic politicians here to be in. I would like them to have more clarity in their leadership and to come out against violence, against this type of anarchy, and not view it through a partisan lens as they are currently.
All right, Andy, appreciate your work on this, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for covering what's happening here.